The Girl Who Built a Spider by George Brewington, Chapters 7 and 8. Chapter 7, Into the Laboratory. After her first steps into the laboratory, Teresa gasped out loud. Whoa, I can't believe it! She hadn't expected the shopping mall to look as it once had, but she certainly didn't think Dr. Flax would have transformed it into this. Flax Industries was like no laboratory she had seen in books or movies. This was no sterile, artificial stainless steel environment with computer screens on every wall. There were no scientists in white coats peering into microscopes, no fluorescent lights, no polished floors. There weren't even any chairs or tables. Instead, there was only— Teresa inhaled deeply to smell it— life. Flowers blossomed in every corner. Purple wisteria bloomed on vines along the upper story guardrail. Pink azaleas had overtaken the toddler bouncy rides. Red bougainvillea flowers covered the kiosks where sales clerks used to sell cell phone covers and perfume. White and yellow roses sprang from pots placed in every available corner. Where there weren't flowers, there were gardens of fruits and vegetables, well-tended rows of watermelon, tomato, onions, carrots, and cabbages stretched down the middle of the walkways, and lemon and lime trees marched along either side. Teresa had never been in a garden so full and lush. She nearly forgot she was indoors. She even felt the warmth of sunlight. When she looked up, she saw that Dr. Flax had expanded the former skylights. There were more skylights than ceiling now, with solar panels in between the panes. Sparrows flew around her head, and she even heard the distant, rapid hammering of a woodpecker. John and Ashley were equally awestruck, looking in every direction, trying to make sense of the place. Was this really the shopping mall they had all known before? Only the enormous stone fountain remained, but now it was covered in moss and vines. Water no longer sprayed up to the ceiling, and the basin below had been transformed from a clear pool where customers once tossed coins into a dark green pond full of lily pads, frogs, and algae. There was even a duck missing an eye, paddling happily in a circle. Two escalators still crisscrossed behind the fountain, but they were no longer running. One of them had been rebuilt into a ramp. Ivies with green leaves and small white flowers curled around and up the handrails, and surrounding them on all sides was the sound of rushing water. "Is there a waterfall in here?" Teresa asked Miss Curie with wonder. "Yes, Miss Brown. The good doctor has filled the walls and the floor below with pipes of water that are constantly moving. This brilliant design cools the building in the summer and captures heat during the winter. The water moves through so many natural purifiers, you can open any of the taps you see in the walls to get a refreshing drink of the cleanest water you've ever tasted." John immediately ran to the nearest tap, put his mouth under it, and turned it on so that water poured all over his face. "She's right! This water's crystal clear and ice cold." "You're embarrassing yourself," Ashley scolded, but John kept on drinking. Ashley knelt at the fountain's basin to admire all the different species of algae there. "These specimens are so beautiful," she said. "I love how bright and red they are." Miss Curie tapped her pen on her clipboard impatiently. Yes, the doctor is quite an accomplished phycologist. We house 216 different types of red algae here, all of which are edible." Ashley perked up. "Dr. Flax collects algae? I can't wait to show him mine in more detail." Miss Curie smirked at her condescendingly. "Your species of blue-green pond scum is hardly unique. Miss Dean, your second-place spirulina is commonplace and frequently found off the coast of the Florida Keys. I imagine you collected yours while on vacation with your arrogant parents." John started laughing, spitting out a mouthful of water. Ashley turned away, crushed. Teresa couldn't understand why Miss Curie had to be so mean. Her father had taught her that it was rude to use such insulting words like arrogant, especially when applied to people you had just met. She stepped up to Ashley carefully. "I bet Dr. Flax hasn't made spirulina tortillas like yours, though. It's one thing to collect algae, but it takes talent to make them into real food. I think your tortillas taste as good as any I've ever had. You're a very good chef. Ashley turned angrily on her. I'm a psychologist, not a chef. We have an assortment of condiments available in our entirely vegan kitchen if you would like to add a bit more flavor to your algae dishes so they are tolerable. Teresa jumped at the voice. Standing right behind her was a young man with piercing golden eyes and black hair, gelled and sharply parted. He was wearing a dark blue suit with an even darker tie, plus an unusual faux leather apron with the imprint of a pineapple on the front. Flax was stamped across the top of it, and a whole assortment of tools stuck out of his pockets. He didn't seem to care that he had startled Teresa. He bent down with his hands behind his back to study her spider. This machine could prove useful, he said. But he didn't explain any further. He looked briefly into Ashley's aquariums, but didn't acknowledge Ashley herself, who stood up a little straighter, eager to answer any questions he might have. Then the young man took a look at John's bubble maker. Why the obsession with bubbles? He sneered. John shrugged. I don't know. I just love them. They're perfect spheres formed in nature, for one thing. Why do you put so much gel in your hair? Makes you look like you're made of plastic. Why are you so rude? The man snapped back. Are you an inventor here too? Teresa asked. He's not an inventor of anything, Miss Curie answered before he could. The young gentleman gave her a menacing look and straightened his tie and apron. My name is Zachary Flax. I'm the doctor's nephew and protege. You're not anyone's protege either, Miss Curie said, impatient as ever. Where is Dr. Flax? Is he all right? He hasn't texted me all morning. He left without telling me where he was going again. We can't afford to have another accident on the premises. Dr. Flax's safety is paramount. I'm quite all right, Marie. You need not fret, although I always appreciate your concern for my welfare. They all turned to see Dr. Flax walking briskly forward to them from the eastern end of the laboratory. He was once again wearing boots covered in black pluff mud and carrying what looked like a fencing mask with electronic enhancements. Miss Curie immediately started flying around the doctor like Mercury in orbit, hot and fast, and buzzing with questions. How good to see you, Doctor. Are you okay? Will you be going out again this morning? Can I send these children home? They really are dangerous little creatures. They will only impede my ability to protect you. Dangerous little creatures. Teresa didn't want to be perceived like that, or be a guest in a laboratory where she wasn't wanted. Her father certainly wouldn't mind if she turned around and walked home right now. Ashley perked right up and pretended like Marie Curie hadn't said a word. It's a real honor to be here, Dr. Flax, she said. I've always wanted to be the best student in my class, so I know I'll be the best student here as well. John rolled his eyes clear to the ceiling, but Dr. Flax grinned and bowed quite formally before them all. No, Miss Dean, it is indeed my honor to have you three here. We are going to accomplish so much this summer. And Marie, you need not worry your little robot head about these young scientists causing any trouble. You're doing an excellent job fulfilling your programming. Marie Curie is a robot too? No way! John shouted. Miss Curie seemed rather embarrassed by the comment. She stopped tapping her pen and circling the doctor. When she came to a halt, her skirt fluttered just enough for Teresa to see that Miss Curie's ankles did not end in shoes or even feet, but a single silver ball. Teresa tried not to stare. She didn't want to be rude, but Miss Curie was a robot. Do you like your laboratories? The doctor asked enthusiastically. I ordered the furnishings specifically for each of you. What? Her own personal laboratory? Teresa exchanged excited looks with John and even Ashley. I've yet to show them their labs, Uncle Neil, Zachary said warily. He seemed like a man desperately in need of a nap. Miss Curie started tapping her pen again. That's Dr. Uncle Neil to you, Zach. Zachary pushed her on the forehead with 2 fingers, causing her to roll backwards. Dr. Uncle is not proper English, Marie. Maybe you're malfunctioning, just like poor Thomas. Zachary, Marie, please, the doctor said, as if he had heard these 2 bicker too many times before. Let us be courteous in front of our guests. Yes, my new friends, you will each have a laboratory of your own, equipped with everything you need to let your imaginations soar. Perhaps you will even build something worthy of being included in next year's Flax Inventions for a Better World catalog. Ashley side-eyed Teresa for a split second, but Teresa knew that look well enough from every competitive kid she had ever encountered in school. The I'm going to crush you and let you know it look. But Teresa didn't want to crush anyone. Weren't they on the same team? Each day you will arrive at 9, Dr. Flax continued. Please eat a good breakfast before you arrive because you'll promptly begin working in your laboratories. The morning has been scientifically proven to be the most productive time of the day, so I want you 3 to have that time to yourselves to learn, to explore, to create. Then at noon, my nephew will provide you a delicious and healthy salad he's made himself. Salad construction really is his greatest talent. At this compliment, Zachary let out the longest rumbling groan she had ever heard. It was really quite uncalled for and seemed like a sound a disobedient child would make. But the doctor ignored it as if this, too, was a frequent occurrence. After lunch, we will have a group discussion about environmental science that will hopefully prove useful to all of us. After that, there will be more time to work in your laboratories. Then at 5 o'clock, you'll return home, where I hope you'll get a good night's rest. A lot can be accomplished while dreaming, you know. Does that schedule suit everyone? The schedule suited Teresa just fine. She couldn't believe her luck. Mornings of pure, unsupervised inventing and afternoon discussions with the great Dr. Flax. What could be better? So, Zachary, if you will kindly show our new colleagues to their laboratories, I must resume my search for the lost member of our family. Our sweet Tommy has gotten some bad ideas in his head and is hiding himself from us. But have no fear, I've invented just the tool to find him. Dr. Flax raised the futuristic fencing mask. He also removed a pair of golden gloves from one of his many overall pockets. This sensory amplifier has proven useful on more than one occasion. It will enhance my vision 100 times. My hearing will be amplified as much as I can bear. These gloves will allow me to sense movement when I put my hands in the mud or the water. And even my sense of smell will be heightened, although I'm not certain Tommy has any discernible odor. What about taste? John asked. Well, the amplifier does not increase the potency of the human taste buds at present, and I'm not sure what I could taste. That would lead me to one undoubtedly very lonely and confused robot. But for a future model, your suggestion is a good one, Mr. Cooper. Is this hunt really necessary? Marie Curie said anxiously. Thomas is probably gone for good. Maybe we should accept that he's had an unfortunate fate. But we all saw him this morning, Ashley interrupted. You almost stuck him with a needle, and then he ran off into the pineapple fields. Miss Curie whipped around on her rolling ball with murder in her electric eyes. Why don't you keep your smug little mouth shut, Miss Dean? Yes, Miss Dean, Zachary agreed haughtily. You are quite out of order. What? Dr. Flask gasped, completely taken aback. Can this be true, Marie? Why wouldn't you have informed me immediately? I've been searching the marsh since sunrise, and you knew he was in our front yard all this time. I simply don't understand your resentment toward your own brother.
I never programmed you with the emotion of jealousy, and yet you exhibit all the qualities of an envious and spiteful younger sibling. If valuable time wasn't being lost, I'm afraid we'd have to have a serious examination of your central processing unit.
So it was Marie who Thomas considered a sister. She was the one Thomas had expressed such concern for last night, and yet she had chased him away this morning and told him never to come back. Miss Curie, if it was possible for a robot, looked embarrassed and tried to avoid eye contact with the doctor. But he took her hands in his and held them tight.
Marie, you will be joining me in the pineapple fields. Perhaps this will be the morning that we can reunite my children and iron out any grievances you two may have. Then, finally, I can get back to my special project.
Dr. Flax turned to Teresa, Ashley, and John.
My apologies, friends. Let's not allow this family spat to delay you three. Zachary, if you please, show them to their laboratories. I can't wait to hear what you all think of them.
Yes, Uncle, Zachary sighed, already exhausted by the task. As he walked up the ramp, waving for them to follow, John whispered excitedly to Teresa.
Isn't this crazy? I bet Dr. Flax and his nephew are robots too.
She would have never thought such a thing, but now Teresa really did wonder. Chapter 8, Personal Laboratories. Zachary led them up the ivy-covered ramp to the upper level of the western wing of the mall, where, he said with utmost boredom, they would find their personal laboratories. He didn't offer to carry Teresa's spider, or pull Ashley's wagon full of algae, or lug John's 6-foot-tall wooden bubble maker. Teresa didn't mind carrying her spider, but it would have only been proper Southern manners for their host to have at least offered. As they walked, Zachary pointed out the different rooms and their intended purposes. Each room, once a former store, was locked with a solid metal gate pulled down from the ceiling. Above each gate was the room's new name spelled out, like the sign above the front doors, in a mismatch of letters recycled from the stores that used to occupy the paper mill mall. Zachary walked slowly, as if to deliberately dull their excitement. To our left is plastics. You'll see 3 large bins by this gate. If you have any plastic refuse at home that can't be recycled, please bring it tomorrow. We go through 20 bins a day, and we can always use more.
You need unrecyclable plastic? What for?
Ashley asked curiously.
The thing inside eats it, Zachary replied.
It is always hungry. John put his ear up to the metal gate.
There's something growling in there.
You should know it also devours children. Let's keep moving. Teresa wanted to take a listen too, but she also didn't want to miss anything. She couldn't wait to see her laboratory. She wondered which of the former stores it would be. The shoe store, 10 East? One of the pet stores? The goofy souvenir shop, Dexter's? There were so many possibilities. As they walked, Teresa marveled at how much nature thrived inside the laboratory. Every former store was now surrounded by trees, flowers, and bushes. Everywhere were birds, squirrels, and even bees. There was no longer need for electric lighting. Sunlight poured in through the skylights. There was no longer need for soft ambient shopping music. The calming rush of water surrounded them. It was as if nature and technology had finally learned how to live together in harmony, even if only in this building. This room's for the drones, Zachary said, waving to his left casually without stopping. Sure enough, in unlit neon letters taken from old food court restaurants, the room was aptly labeled Drones. Again, John put his ear to the gate.
I hear them.
Ashley and Teresa couldn't resist pressing their ears to the metal. Teresa did hear a buzzing that grew louder, then receded, then grew louder again, as if the drones inside were flying in circles. Of course you can hear them, Zachary said. They're always flying. We don't turn them off. We can't turn them off. Never go in this room. The awful things have caused too many accidents in the laboratory already. Each room was locked with a padlock. Teresa had never seen locks so large. Instead of simple and small keypads, they were large, glowing color wheels the size of pizzas. They were set into the right side of each gate. The locks reminded her of her old electronic memory game Simon, except these discs were comprised of 13 wedges instead of 4. The wedges were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and shades in between. On closer examination, she saw that each wedge was labeled with an animal and its silhouette. Born and raised in South Carolina, Teresa immediately recognized that all the animals were native to her state. There was an American alligator, scary, a red-tailed hawk, a blue crab, a loggerhead sea turtle — she'd seen baby loggerheads in real life, scurrying to find the ocean by moonlight — a great egret, the prettiest one, a copperhead snake, scarier, a bobcat, a redfish, her dad's favorite, a Boykin spaniel, her favorite, a black-tipped shark, the scariest, a bottlenose dolphin, super smart and friendly, a pig frog, cute, and the cannonball jellyfish, many of which she had seen washed up on Folly Beach. It was really the coolest lock she had ever seen, and she wanted to start pressing the wedges. She wondered why anyone would make a keypad lock so tempting, but then she had to ask herself why most locks were so boring. If you must have a lock on your door, why not make it as colorful and creative as this one? And here we have John's laboratory. All 3 children gasped out loud. His name had been spelled out in 3 large letters above the entrance: John. Teresa recognized the oversized J that had been borrowed from one of the department store's J.M. quarters. John laughed with delight and ran inside. "It's a bubble maker's paradise!" His lab had once been a Cindy's cinnamon buns. The ovens, chairs, and goofy pink and white decorations had been removed, but the large counters and sinks remained. There was all the space a master bubble maker could want. In addition, Dr. Flax had provided John a wide assortment of tools and equipment to allow his imagination to run wild. There were tubs of different soaps, containers of starches, and biodegradable plastic bubble-making frames of all kinds. There were air compressors, fans, helium tanks, and even a tiny windmill sitting abreast a tiny moving river on a table covered with tiny models of houses, roads, and mountains. There were stacks of tubes to use, lots of tubes, wide, long, narrow, short, wavy, wiggly, and one that twisted like a pretzel. There was also an assortment of paints, a desk with a sketch pad and pencils, and a whiteboard that interacted with a laptop computer so that, when ready, John could give a presentation on whatever he had invented. "And it's mine for the whole summer?" John asked, almost not believing it. "For the whole summer," Zachary sighed begrudgingly while wiping his eyes. "You'll note that there's a lock on the inside as well as the outside. I will whisper your combination in your ear." He leaned over, cupped his hands to John's ear, and said it very quietly. John listened carefully. "Cool," he said, grinning with delight. "That'll work." "Of course it'll work," Zachary said. "Don't forget it, because you may need to lock yourself in your lab one day."
"Why would we ever want to lock ourselves inside?" Ashley asked.
Zachary laughed out loud.
"Because some of these inventions have not been perfected and are more prone to cause harm than good. Some of them really should be put out of their misery, if you were to ask me, but," he sighed, "no one ever does."
Teresa decided she would not tell her father about that.
"Let's keep moving," Zachary said to John. "You'll have time to play later."
John followed reluctantly. He clearly wanted to stay behind and see what else he could find in his bubble-making lab.
"Bubbles of all possible passions,"
Teresa heard their host mutter as they continued their walk.
"Such a waste of talent."
They came to Ashley's laboratory next. Ashley was spelled out beautifully in cursive letters borrowed from the former candle shop, the flower shop, and Fish, 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 the tropical fish shop that had once occupied this room. Ashley dropped her wagon handle and put her hands to her head in disbelief.
"This is my laboratory? Mine?" It meets with your approval, then? Zachary sighed. Ashley was on the verge of tears. It's simply magnificent! It really was. All three children wandered through its aisles. In many ways, this space was as Teresa remembered it when it was a fish shop. Aquariums of all sizes lined the shelves. But now, instead of fish, the tanks were full of colorful algae. Where there had once been an aisle of fish food and nets, there were now bags and bags of powdered nutrients. Along the back wall, there were test tubes, Bunsen burners, and everything one would need for chemistry experiments. There were all different manners of grow lights, organized by size and type, and there was even a giant clay oven where Ashley could cook anything she wanted, even though she was a phycologist and not a chef. Where there had once been a staff break room, there was now a very professional office with a desk and a whiteboard and accompanying laptop like the one in John's lab. There were neat piles of papers, pens, pencils, and journals for her to record and reflect on her various phycology experiments. There was also a giant koi pond in the center of the room with a waterfall pouring into it from the ceiling. Beautiful koi of all colors swam along the lily pads that had been placed there. There were plastic dividers in the pond, too, so that Ashley could separate different species of algae there where she saw fit. It was a beautifully constructed laboratory, and Teresa told Ashley so. She only hoped hers would be as nice. My parents would be so proud to see me here, Ashley said quietly to herself. Zachary whispered her lock combination to her as well. Ashley listened very seriously and then asked him to repeat it so that she was sure she had it. Zachary grumbled like he was being asked to move a boulder up a mountain, but he told it to her again. Come on, he said. Let's go to Spider Girl's room and get this over with. They walked past several more locked storefronts that did not have names above their doors. John asked about them all. What's the deal with this one? What's behind this door? What about that one over there? But Zachary ignored all his inquiries. Teresa began to worry when they came to a stop at the end of the upper walkway. There was nowhere else to go. Before them was an enormous closed-down department store, Bellstrom's. It used to be a nice store where she and her father shopped for her school clothes every summer. Now it was closed, with a large plastic tarp hanging from the ceiling to cover both the first and second floor entrances. Well, Zachary said with a shrug, this is it. And he pulled on a thick rope that was hanging from the scaffolding next to them. The tarp fell to the floor with a dramatic whoomp. They all looked up in awe. In gigantic, glorious letters, borrowed from the old Bellstrom sign and the fancier department store Headley's from the eastern end of the mall, was her name, bigger and bolder than she had ever dared imagine it. Teresa. Zachary pressed the animal padlock combination, and the large metal gate that guarded her laboratory began to rise. Parakeets and chickadees flew from the lemon trees outside of it as the interior was revealed. It was huge. Enormous, really. Whoa, was all Teresa could say, to which John started laughing. Oh man, Teresa, you got the penthouse suite.